Welcome to Fertility Help Hub's podcast. I'm Eloise, the founder and editor, and each week we bring you expert interviews, reader stories, holistic products, and more. Subscribe to our podcast for free so you never miss an episode. Good morning. Today I am welcoming guest Kirsty Lee, who is 12 weeks pregnant after a very difficult journey getting there. And she's coming on today to talk a bit about her experience. Thank you for coming on. And obviously, huge congratulations. I know that you've just had your 12-week scan. So for everyone who's listening and struggling with their own fertility journey, I wanted to speak to you because I know you've been through quite the ringer in getting here and find out more about your personal story. So tell us a little bit about what happened from the beginning.
First of all, thank you for having me. Where do I start? It's been a long journey. It's been over a year and a half, or about a year and a half now. My partner and I began planning a family about August last year. And we both thought, well, look, let's try naturally. I was 35, he was 31. I am a bit of a cradle snatcher. He is younger than me. So we decided that we would just try naturally because obviously you sort of don't just automatically think, oh, there's something wrong with either of us. So we tried naturally, and 2 months in, we fell pregnant, which was amazing, and we were so excited and had obviously no doubts because this was the first time that we had been pregnant. And that slowly faded and we had miscarried very early on at about 4 weeks. Okay, so we picked ourselves up and thought, okay, let's keep going. Let's try again. About another 2 months or maybe 2.5 months went by and we fell pregnant for the second time. And the second time, obviously, we were a bit hesitant on, getting excited, in a bit of disbelief because of the first time, obviously, miscarrying sort of takes a bit of your happiness away. So we went and got the blood test done and the HCG level came back at only 7. So as you would know, that's not really a viable pregnancy.
Did you realise that straight away when the result came back?
Yeah, so I'd already done some research on HCG levels. And my doctor actually said to me on the phone, it's not viable. So with him saying it's not viable and myself knowing that with such a low number, it wasn't going to work, we were pretty devastated, as you can imagine. So that was the second miscarriage within, 5 months. So I said to my partner, there's got to be something wrong because it's obviously attaching to the wall of my uterus, but it's not quite implanting. So we decided to go get some blood tests done. I got my AMH level tested and he got his sperm done. So he's completely fine. In the words of the doctor, he has great swimmers. So that was good news. But I've got an AMH level of only 1.7, which for me being 35, you would see a 1.7 in someone that's about 40 or over. So my partner and I said, okay, well, I'm the issue. We're going to need some help here. Let's find an IVF clinic here in Melbourne. So that's what we did. And the first thing that they did was let's do a laparoscopy, hysteroscopy, and a D&C. So with the first 2 miscarriages, they obviously just came away with my period. So I didn't need to actually have a D&C. But when I went to the IVF clinic, they said, let's give you a complete clean out. Let's do a laparoscopy. Let's go in there and check if anything's wrong. Let's have a look at your lining. And they did find some scarring and some polyps. So she removed them. And then my partner and I thought, well, if the polyps or the scarring was just an issue, we thought, well, that might have been the problem. So we were sort of a bit more positive that maybe perhaps the next time we try or the first round of IVF would kind of work because you kind of think you've found the answer when they do find something wrong.
And why did you think that IVF would be the solution if you knew that you were getting pregnant naturally?
Well, because of the AMH level was so low, and then by the time we'd tried for 5 months, my 36th birthday was coming up. Sort of age and time, even the IVF clinic said, you're turning 36 and your AMH is 1.7. Do you really want to try for another 6 months?
Yeah.
And, I agree. If, we don't have time, something you can't get back.
No.
And time isn't on your side with age and AMH. and also previously having 2 miscarriages, I thought I just need help, a bit of help from science. We know we can make an embryo because we made 2 of them naturally. If I just get a bit of help with it implanting, from maybe a bit of medication, et cetera, I just said to my partner, let's just do it. Time's not on our side. We both wanted to have a child so badly. So yeah, a few factors came into it, but they would be the 2 major ones with the AMH and my age. So this is a little lengthy intro, but just for all the listeners out there, just to get a sort of an idea of my story. So what we did next was we did our first round of egg collection, and we got 10 eggs, 9 fertilized, and 7 made it to day 5, which is very interesting because with such a low AMH, they're quite good numbers. And also for 9 to fertilize and then 7 still to survive. Usually I think they say the percentage rate is 40% don't survive to day 5.
Were you feeling very optimistic at that point?
With the good news of how many eggs we collected and embryos we made, we were feeling quite optimistic. And we did know we can make embryos because we made 2 of them naturally. So, the fact that we made 7 fertilized, 9 fertilized and that 7 made it, I thought, okay, well, my egg quality can't be too bad because the quality has been good enough to fertilize. So we were feeling good with the fertilization rate, the survival rate. I'd had the laparoscopy, I'd had the clean out done, I had the scarring and the polyps removed. I thought, great, collection, let's do a fresh transfer. So we did a fresh transfer and it didn't even implant. So that was kind of we sort of were going on this uphill winning streak.
Did you transfer 2 or 1?
We transferred 1. My fertility clinic didn't actually want to transfer 2.
Did you want to?
That's a good question. I did in one way because we had 7. We had 7 embryos. But with their advice saying no, I guess we just went with what you think, their best opinion is because they're the experts. There is a higher risk transferring to. There's a higher risk with twins, and there's a higher risk because I'm over 35.
And the 2-week wait is just so difficult, isn't it? And then to get, because I've been there too, to get a negative after that 2 weeks is just heartbreaking.
Oh, absolutely. And, some women say it's better for it not to implant than have it implant and miscarry again. But I just think all of it's just devastating no matter which path you go down. And especially because we were sort of on such a positive road at that time of thinking, okay, we've found the issue, we've fixed the issue, we've got great numbers, we've got great embryos stored in the freezer, let's keep going on this positive roll. And then it just sort of all came to a stop. And it's so devastating. And it's almost like having another miscarriage almost because you've lost that embryo as well.
And as you said, you've lost that time and you feel like you're back to square one.
Absolutely, back to square one. So by the time we had the 2 miscarriages, the laparoscopy, so the surgery, then the egg collection, we're sort of already 7 months into trying and into the year of roller coaster emotions.
And at cost as well.
And the cost, exactly. I mean, surgery, egg collection, medication, scans, time off work, mentally, you've used all your emotions and your energy and everything. And when something's positive and then you get a negative, it's just such a crash, sort of a crash back down to earth, of realization that, hey, gosh, this might not work.
Absolutely. And so what happened next?
So then we thought, okay, let's pick ourselves up. We thought that, chances are, I think they say here in Australia that 3rd cycle is the most successful cycle because 1 and 2 is a bit of a trial and error, with medications and how your body responds. So we're like, okay, let's just go straight into cycle number 2. So cycle number 2, we started to do all the injections and my lining only got to 7.4. And the clinic that I was with at the time, because I'll get into that, because I have actually changed clinics. But this first clinic, they wanted my lining at around 8 millimeters, and it only got to 7.4. So at the end of the sort of the 2 weeks of doing all the injections and the medication and all the time and all the emotions again, she actually counseled my cycle, and I was absolutely devastated because, you know, again, you're back to square one. You're back to another month, another waiting for your period to come. Because I mean, no one who on earth ever wants a period to come until it comes to IVF and you need to start a cycle and you so badly want your period to come. She counseled my cycle. She wasn't happy with 7.4. Stephen and I were a little bit like, well, you know, it's only 0.6 off the recommended 8 millimeters. So we just took the advice of the fertility specialist, and she said, we're going to have to counsel your cycle. So we counselled it, and back to square one, I had to wait for my period to come so we could start cycle number 3. Now, before we started cycle number 3, my partner had to go interstate to work. So originally he was only going to go for about, I think it was about 4 weeks. So I said to him, I've done these cycles before. I know what I'm doing. And at the same time, COVID had just started to become really bad here in Australia, and we began to go into sort of lockdown. So my partner and I knew that even if he stayed in Melbourne, he wouldn't be able to come to any of the scans with me. So I said to him, you go interstate and you work. I'm going to start the 3rd cycle still with my first clinic. You know, pretty much I've got this, babe, I can do it. So I went and started the medication on my 3rd cycle. By this time, we'd actually upped my medication even more, because you remember she's trying to get me to 8 millimeters for my lining. Now, in these 3 cycles, we hadn't done any other tests. So at this stage, my clinic presumed that it was my lining all along, that why the embryo wouldn't quite implant and stay. So it was at this stage, all the focus was on my lining. So we tried to get my lining more thicker. We'd up the medication. So my 3rd cycle, we got to about 7.8, 7.9. I was so excited. I rang Steve, because at this stage he's still away interstate working. And I said to him, 7.9, we're there, babe. We're going to transfer an embryo in 5 days. My fertility specialist is going to call me tonight so I can trigger. She's going to tell me what time to trigger. And then 5 days later, we'll transfer a 5-day embryo, frozen. I went home that night and she rang me, and I answered the phone. I was like, hi, oh my gosh, you know, I'm so excited. We're going to transfer in 5 days. What time should I trigger? And she said, we've actually missed your ovulation. I said, what? She goes, you've already ovulated. And I said, how? This is a medicated FET cycle, a frozen cycle. How do you miss someone's ovulation? That's your duty of care, to make sure that the cycle isn't ruined and you don't miss an ovulation. And she said, what day are you of your cycle? And I said, well, I'm day 11. And she was just in complete shock, because she's the fertility specialist. They don't actually book you in for your scans. That's the job of the actual clinic. She was devastated for me. She's like, I'm so sorry. You know, I'm going to investigate, but you should have been booked in for either, you know, day 7 or 8. And then we monitor your LH surge to make sure that you haven't ovulated.
You managed to get your womb lining all thick as well.
Well, that's the thing. I was so happy and excited, because we'd got my lining thick enough. And it's funny, because I actually was quite sore in that cycle. I don't really get too sore from the medication, but I was really bloated, really quite sore, almost like ovulation pains. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been still injecting myself and my body's already ovulated. So I'm still stimulating myself when my ovaries, they've already ovulated. So my body must have thinking to itself, what are you doing? I've ovulated and you keep injecting me and stimulating me.
Oh my gosh.
So I was in quite a bit of pain, and I actually said to her at the scan, I kind of feel like I've ovulated. You know, I feel ovulation pains. And then I thought to myself, well, maybe it's just pains because I'm on more medication and we've really pumped up my lining. So I didn't really think anything of it. And as a patient, I don't think I need to know.
No, that's what you're paying for, the care. But were you taking injections to stop yourself ovulating?
Well, yes, because we wanted to make sure we knew exactly when I'd ovulated to then count 5 days after to transfer a 5-day embryo.
So those injections didn't stop you ovulating?
No, not quite. So they sort of held me out, and then I would trigger to ovulate so we could plan the ovulation. So we could plan the transfer. So they don't quite stop you from ovulating, but they thicken up your lining, obviously thick enough for us to go, all right, well, I'm going to blood test you and check your ovulation. And if she thinks I'm going to ovulate, I can actually have something to not ovulate.
Absolutely.
So she could have given me an injection to not ovulate. Say if we needed 1 or 2 more days to get my lining thick enough, I believe that she could have given me something to not ovulate. But if she thought my lining was perfect, then she would make me ovulate, by using science, by using a trigger.
Yeah. I remember taking medication to stop myself ovulating, and the clinic saying, keep it in your handbag because you cannot miss I can't remember how many times, whether it was once or twice a day, but you can't miss that injection. So it's so key, isn't it, in terms of timing, and obviously, as you've sadly experienced, something then going wrong and having lost all that time, your body not knowing what's going on and having to start again.
Yeah, well, that's right. So they had just missed my ovulation, and she was so apologetic. And by this time, my partner had extended his time working interstate because I said, don't come back to Melbourne. We're in lockdown. So if you come back here, you're not going to be working. And, this state's full of COVID. Where he went, there was no COVID cases. So he was still away. And he ended up being away for 89 days, in fact. And out of 89 days, it's funny how the universe works, but it was the only day that his phone had died. And I was hysterically crying, and I needed to call him and tell him that they'd missed my ovulation, and I was so emotional. And I think it made me stronger looking back now that I sort of dealt with all the emotions and all the bad news, for those first few hours on my own, because I couldn't get through to him because his phone had died. Every little bit of bad information makes us all stronger.
And so what happened next? Did the clinic take responsibility? Did you carry on with the next cycle?
Well, my fertility specialist took the responsibility and said that she'd investigate. And then when I spoke to the clinic, they were eventually said, okay, well, we'll give you the next cycle for free. But they still wanted me to pay for the one that they'd ruined. And I had expressed my feelings of I wouldn't be doing another cycle if you guys if you'd done your job properly and hadn't missed my ovulation. And this was back-to-back cycles. Like, we weren't giving ourselves a break. We wanted to have this baby. We thought it was just a lining issue, so let's just keep going. And that was pretty much the icing on the cake with that first clinic. They'd had a few other things that had gone wrong, and just ruining my cycle and missing my ovulation. I said, you want me to pay for the one you ruined, but you want to give me a free one. So you're not really giving me a free one. You're just kind of using my money for the one you ruined and just putting it on this one, because they can bulk bill any cycle. So I just said I would like to transfer over to another clinic, and I would like to transfer my 6, because I had 6 embryos left at this time, because we'd obviously used one as a fresh.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 3 cycles down. My partner's still away. I'm doing it all on my own. Thank God for technology and FaceTime and texts and calls, because that's the way we stay connected. And it was all exciting. And I had found a new clinic. This clinic is a boutique clinic. So many great reviews. And I'd sort of look back now and think, oh gosh, why didn't I go to them at the start? But you can't sort of look back and have regrets, because you'll just sort of hang on to those regrets, don't you?
Definitely.
Otherwise.
So what's your advice for someone who's changing clinics or looking at changing clinics?
Oh gosh, look, if you're like me, I don't like change. I'm a homebody. I have my routine. I have my things that I do every day. And change sort of gives me a bit of anxiety and makes me feel a bit uneasy, which I'm sure it does for many people. So my advice is that no matter how you feel or how anxious things can get, even doing paperwork to change clinics, just the thought of that and the time. And, I even got anxious just even telling that I wanted to leave, because I also don't like not disappointing people, but I don't like to say, well, I'm not really happy with your service anymore. But my advice is, look, it's the best decision I ever made. And if I didn't change clinics, I would not be where I am right now. And, you know, if you're not happy with your clinic, it's your body, it's your life, it's your baby that you want, and nothing should stand in the way of you and this child. So if you want to change things and you're not happy, you just need to find all your strength and you just need to do it. You need to change. You cannot stay in your comfort zone, if that's what I can call it. Because like I said, if you're not happy, you need to change. You're not getting the answers, or you're not getting the care, because you're paying these people a lot of money. And even if you're going through the public system, you're still worthy of getting great service.
Absolutely.
So I just think if you need to change, you just got to do it. Just take that leap and do it, because, you know, I changed to a different clinic, and first thing that she did was test me for MK cells. And my old clinic actually didn't even believe in the natural killer cells that we all have. She's apparently written a thesis on it and believes that, you know, that having a endometrial biopsy and testing for NK cells is you know, she doesn't believe in it. So, you know, even that, changing clinics. I mean, what happens if I had stayed with my original clinic and just kept doing round after round, and it wasn't even a lining issue? I believed to this day the issue was the natural killer cells. What they do, for anyone listening that's not quite familiar with them, we all have NK cells in our body, but for some people, if they have a higher level, anything that's foreign in your body, so i.e. an embryo, it tries to kill off that foreign object. So it, you know, my new clinic put me on these blood thinners, and therefore, you know, my body doesn't think that the embryo is a blood clot and try and get rid of it. So my problem might not even have been a lining issue, because my new clinic, we also transferred a frozen embryo, and my lining was 6.7.
Has that resulted in your pregnancy now?
Absolutely. She got me pregnant the first time, and I'm now 12 weeks pregnant from going on an immune protocol, which was the blood thinners and the steroid, the prednisolone, and transferring on a 6.7 lining, because she said I had the 3 layers that on your uterus that, you know, are required for a successful embryo transfer. Now, you think back from when I just said before, on my second cycle, my old clinic counseled me on 7.4. I've just become pregnant on 6.7.
I also had natural killer cells investigated and took the same medication as you, and that actually resulted in my first successful cycle. And I can't guarantee that was why at all, but I am an advocate for exploring all options.
Yeah, definitely. And I've expressed this before. If your clinic doesn't believe in a test, I feel like they should put their personal beliefs to the side. And if any test can possibly get you pregnant, that should be their main outcome. Their main focus is to get us pregnant, not to push any of their personal beliefs on us. So my old clinic didn't believe in NK cells. Well, I look back and think, well, maybe that's why I didn't get pregnant. But isn't that your goal? Isn't that why I'm paying you, to get me pregnant? So if you're anyone listening, that if your clinic out there doesn't test for everything, change clinics.
When you had the early miscarriages, did you have any symptoms?
Do you mean pregnancy symptoms or symptoms of miscarrying?
I know this sounds silly, but did you feel pregnant, or was there something that you thought, okay, something's not right here?
Yeah, so it's funny because the 2 early miscarriages that I had more intense symptoms of being pregnant. So my breasts were so sore, I could hardly put the shower water on them. That was one major symptom that I thought, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, because my breasts are so sore. Oh, I was going to the toilet like so many times, and I was like, this is really odd. Whereas this time, now that I am pregnant, the breast just didn't really hurt much. And that's why a few times I sort of, you know, asked the community, do your symptoms come and go? Because I think after sort of week 5 or 6, my breast just stopped hurting, and they never had hurt as much as they did when I had the miscarriages. So it's funny, being pregnant for such a short time and losing it, the symptoms were so intense and so so high. And yet this time I don't really have many symptoms, but yet I'm so pregnant. The last time I did a HCG test was 122,000. And I've had so many scans that little peanut is wiggling around, and perfect measurement right on my due date time. So I'm highly pregnant, 12 weeks, but just my symptoms are nowhere near what they were like when I miscarried. So I find that really strange. Oh gosh, I think you can't put money on the price of becoming pregnant. I mean, IVF is already pricey enough. Why hold back if that extra test can get you pregnant? Because you just don't know. You don't know which test you need and which test, you don't need. But you just got to sort of try and not look at it as a money maker. You just sort of need to look at it as like an elimination process. Yeah, definitely. If I don't have that gene, at least we tested for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mine actually showed that I have a blood clotting gene, which my mother has, and she got told that it wasn't hereditary, so me and my brother and sister wouldn't have it, and the doctor got it wrong. We do have it. So my children need to be tested for it, because it means that I have to be really, really careful flying, and I had to be on blood thinners throughout all of my pregnancies, the whole way through. So I had a very battered, bruised stomach, because it was like from whatever before the transfer, or just after the transfer, I can't remember, until post-birth, like 8 or 10 weeks post-birth. So that was nearly a year of being on them.
Wow. So you're good at injections. You're good at injections then.
They still sting, don't they?
Yeah, they do. I've done over, I think, 200 now, over the 4 cycles, and they still sting, they still bruise, but I guess every injection is worth it, isn't it?
Definitely. And it really resonated with me, your post the other day about weaning off the meds, because no one ever talks about it, and it's really scary, because the goal is to get pregnant, but then you're kind of left in limbo, aren't you?
Well, that's right. And as I said in my post, I feel like it's my comfort blanket. I feel like the medication got me pregnant. I feel like it's keeping me pregnant. And I did mention this to my obstetrician, and they said, no, your body is keeping you pregnant now. And I just, like, it's so hard to believe, and it's something that you've taken every day, and it goes hand in hand with becoming pregnant when it comes to IVF. And like you said, not many people talk about weaning off medication. I haven't really seen many people, write about it and share their experiences. So I just thought, I need to put this up, because I'm feeling quite scared and anxious, and what's everyone else feel like? Because at the start, when you take the medication, you don't think about stopping it, so that never sort of comes into your mind. And now that I've been told to wean off and stop, I was like, oh gosh, this is another hurdle that I just didn't even think of.
Totally. Thank you so much for your honesty, and I love following what you do, and the links here for Instagram are up, because you do talk about things that need raising, and it's great in the community to hear real stories and real people's thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I try to share a few tips and tricks and my 2-week wait symptoms, and I shared what I ate and what I did differently. If I can share all those things and help someone else out, then, my job is done. I've helped someone else. And you know what? Sharing my own story, though, because so many people can relate, you guys have helped me so much, because I've had so many questions as well. And I don't like to feel alone either. I think sometimes, oh my gosh, am I the only one that's freaking out right now? Even talking about the spotting the other week, when I had a bit of spotting, I thought, how common is this? Like, does everyone else spot? So I just thought I'd pop it up. I'm quite an open book on my Instagram. I'm sort of real, raw. Nothing is sort of off limits. And as I said, by sharing my experience and having my own questions, so many women in this community have helped me, and I do believe I've helped them back. So it's a great platform when used correctly. And it's a great community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all you do.